Okay, so we're going to get started. So this is a coaching Q&A. My name's Lucy. I'm a level 3 triathlon coach. I'm a qualified personal trainer. I've been working with clubs, with individuals on triathlon coaching, running coaching for I don't know how long now. Used to work in one of London's top gyms, again, supporting people in their training in terms of their strength and conditioning to support running and triathlon training. And now I run a mostly online business, writing training plans for people for running, for triathlon goals, for general fitness goals, as well as still, when lockdown allows, doing face-to-face coaching. So this is a Q&A just to answer any questions that I can help you with in terms of your training, in terms of racing, in terms of probably motivation is an issue now with not so many races on the calendar. So pop your questions in on Facebook or on Instagram and I'll do my best to answer them. We've got some in already, so I'll start working through those. In terms of whether this is available afterwards, it'll certainly be available on my page, Feel Fit with Lucy. If you just go to the video section on there, then you'll be able to find that on there. So some questions we've already had in, starting kind of at the beginning. So if people are just starting with their training, whether that's running, whether that's other things, some suggestions of kind of good tips to help them get started. And I would say the first thing is to get a plan. And that doesn't have to be some paid for plan. That doesn't have to be something fancy, but some sort of plan that tells you at the bare minimum what you're going to do each day. And that doesn't mean you have to train every day, but know that you plan to train, say you plan to run 3 times a week. Bare minimum is, you know, you're going to run on a Tuesday, a Thursday, and a Sunday. And you stick that up on your fridge or somewhere visible. And that's going to mean that you've got that accountability to yourself. It's really easy to go, yeah, I'm going to start running and I'll start running tomorrow and I'll start running tomorrow. Oh, I'll start running next week. If you just say, I'm going to get it done, I'm going to put it on these days, that's going to help your accountability. But also the key thing that I see runners do wrong when they first get started is they get really excited because they've just started running and they do way too much at first. So start small, build up. You will get to where you need to get to faster if you try and make sure that you stay consistent. So consistency is probably the biggest thing to work on. Consistency, keeping it regular, not doing too much and then having to come right down because you got injured or you got too knackered. So keep that consistency in there, just keep building up slowly. A lot of people run too fast, faster than they need to. So for when you're just starting out running, your main priority, and indeed up to kind of training for a marathon or something, not even beginners, your main priority is, can you keep going over the distance, and can you keep going without running, without sort of your heart rate going up and up as you get to that kind of limit of what you can do. So training your aerobic system means just really slow running. You can be running along, breathing through your nose. That's easy enough. Or hard enough for the benefits you need to get. So you're getting that time on your feet, you're building up the distance, you're working that aerobic system by running easy. You don't need to run hard. When you run hard, you're more likely to get injured, you're going to get tired faster, you're probably going to come home and go, oh, I'm knackered, I can't get on with everything else I plan to do that day. So keeping it easy, yeah, put some speed work in there, but the vast majority of what you should do should be that easy running. Then if you're planning specifically, rather than just getting into running, but you're planning for a certain race, so you're doing a half marathon, you're doing a 10K, whatever, then it's about making sure that you know where you need to get to. So you know the distance you're training for, and you know when you need to get there for, presuming you still have a race date in mind. So then you need to kind of work back. So if I need to get to that distance by that time, how long have I got to get there? How am I going to get that steady build? And making sure that it's not always just building up, but making sure there's time for recovery in there as well. So if I'm writing a training plan, I'll normally have people building up for 2 or 3 weeks, and then we have a recovery week, and then we go up again. Now, that doesn't mean you do nothing in that recovery week. It just means we take down the volume slightly. That gives your body time to recover. And all my clients are so sick of hearing me say this, but you do not get fitter from training. You get fitter from recovering from training. When we train, we break our body down. We then need time for our body to rebuild itself stronger. So if we're always nudging up, we're always just on that edge of overtraining potentially. We want to have that recovery week, then we come back to it fresh again. And people always go, I don't want to take the recovery week, I want to carry on building. But after that recovery week, they come back again and they can train so much better and feel so much stronger. So it's really, really worth it. So you're training for this marathon, say you've got your end date, you know when you need to get there by. find a plan. You can get one off the internet. Again, it's mostly just about having that structure, that accountability, and that steady build rather than trying to do too much too soon. If you've got, say, it's a 16-week plan or a 20-week plan, I would start a few weeks early. Pretty much anybody I ever know has missed out some of those, and particularly the long runs, the ones that you tend to do at the weekend. Those are those key ones, and you will end up missing some out because you get ill, because you get injured, because your friend's got a birthday party, whatever it is. So given that you're going to probably miss some weeks out, start a few weeks early if you have time to, so that you've just got that flexibility to then catch up on those missed runs. In terms of pacing, people always say, I want to run my marathon at 4, I want to do a 4-hour marathon. Great, have goals, definitely have goals to aim towards, but you can't just decide that's the pace you want to run at. You need to be able to run at that pace. So what I would do is do a time trial, a 5 or a 10K timed. So trying to run as fast as you can for that time trial, and then work out what your predicted marathon pace is from that. I use the VDOT system, so a really famous running coach called Jack Daniels, no, not from the whiskey. He has a system called VDOT pacing. There's loads of other systems out there, but use something where you can look up your predicted marathon time and get used to running at that pace. If you get fitter through your training, brilliant, you'll be able to speed that up. But if you go out too fast on race day, you will end up going really fast because you feel fresh at the beginning, you've got that taper, you're feeling fresh, but then you end up slowing down, and that's the least efficient way to run. The most efficient way is just steady pace all the way through. If you get towards the end, you can feel that you've got some, beans left, take up the pace then, but don't overdo it from the beginning. Emily is asking a specific question. I'm just opening up the question. So Emily is doing lots of slow running, lots of endurance running, but whenever she does anything harder, she feels like she's going to die, and she's worried about racing. Emily, I'm guessing you're talking about Ironman racing, or what kind of distance you're racing for? Because if you're racing for anything long, you only need to stay in that kind of zone 2 pace. So you don't need to get to that hard pace. You might do speed work to get yourself faster, but the vast majority, particularly if you're getting to that stage where you feel you've got that limiting factor, just keep doing that easy pace to build up the distance and make sure you're not still getting to that point. Then even when you're excuse me, at that easy pace, you don't want your heart rate to still be going up. If it is, you've still got loads more work to do on building that aerobic base. So keep it easy, keep building up the distance, make sure you can keep it easy at that easy pace. Even, if you're doing anything longer than a 100-meter sprint, you're pretty much relying on your aerobic system. So again, the vast majority of the training you need to do is that aerobic system. Questions about cross training. So there was a question about is it better to replace a run with a cycle or to add it in? I guess it depends on what your goal is. So if your goal is to be doing a cycle race or to be getting better at cycling at the same time as running, then your plan needs to include both of those, definitely. If your goal is just about running, you might want to include some cycling in there. I certainly include it. I do a Monday morning recovery ride, which is just about really low zone 1 spinning, really easy, just getting the blood flowing. So I'm using it as recovery. Similarly, if say one of my clients is injured and they're still trying to train towards that race, but they can't do weight bearing, I might put cycling in there so they carry on building up their fitness, but without that weight bearing, to then hopefully get them back to being able to run again. But it would really depend on what the goal of that cycling is. If you're doing it just because you enjoy it, yeah, just make sure you plan for it, though. It will have an impact on the rest of the week. Decide, is it something you're going to do easy, so you're saving your beans for your running, or is it something you want to work hard in? Just decide what the goal of it is. In terms of strength and conditioning, lots of questions about strength and conditioning. What's the point of it? Should we do it? Do we need to do it? I would break my strength and conditioning down into mobility work, which is about getting the body moving, improving that range of motion at the joint. And that's something I would do pre-run. So before I go out on a run or before I do a strength session, making sure my body is actually moving. So I always do a mobility warm-up before I do my sessions. And if you want some ideas on that, if you join any of my live classes on Feel Fit with Lucy, I always begin with a mobility warm-up. And then it would be about stability. So do all your muscles hold you in place in the right place? So for example, our glutes, we hear lots about our glutes. You could be doing, really heavy squats in the gym or something, really working those glutes, but do they engage when you run? And do they give you that stability you need? So it's not about strength, it's about, do they hold everything in place? Can they cope with getting tired and still work? So really simple things like single leg or double leg to start off with glute bridges, and building them up and building them up. And if you can't hold it for long enough, then how are you going to be using, if you get tired after a minute or something of doing glute bridges or glute raises, how are you going to have your glutes engaging when you're running? So that's my bedrock. It's got to be the mobility and the stability. Yes, it will help you get you faster, not so much because it actually is changing your body to get you faster in terms of physiological changes, but it's preventing injury. And injury is the thing that's going to slow you down. If you take time out of your training because you get injured, that will slow you down. So mobility, stability are the bedrocks. If you've got that done, and if you've got enough time in your week to add in some proper strength training with weights or some power training, yes, that's definitely proven to make you faster. But you have to have that base of the stability. You can't do strength work until you have the control. In terms of what to do, hip mobility is a big one. So making sure you've got that range of motion at the hip. As I said, single leg or double leg glute bridges are my absolute bedrock. They're not sexy, but they are so good. And I used to do heavy gym work until gym shut down for lockdown. And since lockdown, I've been teaching loads of classes. I'm doing loads of single leg glute bridges, and I realized how weak my glutes were, or how they weren't engaging when I needed them to do. I could do those squats, I could do my deadlifts, whatever. I had that strength there, but I've got so much stronger just in that single leg stuff. So don't worry that you haven't got weights at home. You can do a hell of a lot with body weights. And then lunges, whether it's with weights or without, lunges are amazing. They are single leg work, so they're helping to work on any imbalances you've got. You're working on balance. I would do maybe a back lunge and then stepping up and balancing on one foot, or maybe adding in a hop. So loads of varieties around lunges, but lunges are my go-to as well. Peter has asked a question. What's the good way to improve the speed? So my best 5K is at 10:43. That sounds ridiculously fast. I'm not sure if I've read that wrong. Or maybe it's 10:43 pace. I don't know. But anyway, in terms of getting faster, whatever your goal is, whatever the distance is, it's about building up that training and the consistency. And I'm going to keep on saying it. I know it's boring, but it's whenever I look over my clients' plans, or particularly when people first come to me before I've been working with them, and I look over their training, and it will be up one week, down the next week, up the next week, down the next week. Your body likes consistency, particularly things like tendons, which is where runners often get injured. They really like consistent load. So just because you've got some more time one week, or you're feeling fresh and you do loads more that week, it normally then means you do less the next week. So try and aim for that consistency. Try and make sure you're running at that easy pace. Again, I know it feels really slow. It's easy enough. You could breathe through your nose. And be happy running, and that will feel ridiculously slow, but that is the most effective way to be building that aerobic base. If you're running faster than that, as runners, we like to go out, we want to feel that we're working as hard as we can for the distance that we're running at, and we come back and go, yes, I worked hard, that's great. That's fine, but what impact does that have on the rest of the week? Maybe you had a speed session planned the next day, and you do that speed session a lot slower than you could have done because you're still tired from the day before. Maybe you're just tired the next day and you don't want to go for your run because you feel a bit knackered, and you got home yesterday and you felt really tired when you got home, and so you don't really fancy doing your run today. So make those runs easy. Make them, people always go, oh, but what about Strava? What are people going to say? I don't care if people see my running. My 5K time is about 20 minutes and a half. 20, 30, however you say that. And my easy pace, I do mostly around 6 minutes per kilometer. And that is slower than most of my clients, or most people who I see running, who have a slower 5K time, but they're doing their easy runs faster than that. I don't care that people see that I'm running at a 6K, 6 minutes per kilometer easy run pace. It's about my results on race day. So turn off Strava if it bothers you, but you know that if you're getting those better runs in, you can do more of it. You can build up the volume. That's what's going to get you fitter. Lou, offer advice for improving cycling. Do you want to just drop me a message into the chat and just say what's particularly? I mean, again, if it's about improving fitness, then it's again just building up the distance, building up the time, keeping it easy. If you have a turbo trainer, that's a really efficient way of getting some training in. Loads of people are really obsessed, especially through lockdown. Everybody's got the glitziest, or have ordered but haven't yet got the glitziest smart trainers. You can do a lot with a dumb trainer, the ones that don't have the power on there. Or if you're really getting into cycling, I'd go with a dumb trainer and a power meter on your bike, so you've got that data when you get outside as well, but completely up to you. But yeah, build up the fitness. So whether that's spin classes when gyms reopen, turbo trainers, just cycling easy, but then work on your skills as well. So you can get so much faster if you're more confident on the bike, you're able to take more speed into the corners, you're happier going down hills faster. I see so many people going down hills and if you've got a road bike, they're on the tops there. Get down on those drops. It feels scary at first, but your center of gravity is lower. And so actually you've got loads more control and you've got more control over the brakes. So that would be kind of one big tip if you're at that stage of wanting to get faster going downhill. But otherwise, everything that I've said about running is the same, that consistency, keeping it easy so you can do your hard stuff hard, so you can build up your volume. But give me a shout back in if there's something more specific you're looking for there. Lockdown. So how do we adjust our training for lockdown? So most of us had some sort of goal that we planned for this year, and things haven't quite turned out as we had imagined. First thing, be kind to yourself. From what I've seen from my clients, it's really split into two groups. Some people, their training has gone through the roof. They have loved lockdown. They're eating better. They've got more time because they're not commuting. They're able to plan their runs or their training when they want, rather than it being sort of stuck around this kind of nominal work day. Other people have had a really tough time of it, and people don't fit just one or the other, there's crossover, but particularly people who've got kids at home or caring responsibilities, people who haven't been able to get that social network of support that they depend on. Your body absorbs stress without really knowing the difference. So training stress, life stress, had an argument with my boyfriend, my boss has been an idiot, I've got an impending work deadline, all of that comes in as stress on your body. So if you need to drop down your training volume because life stress has gone up, that is the right thing to be doing. So yes, you might not be doing as much running, but you need to make sure you get that recovery. And if stress is high, your recovery is going to be reduced. So drop down the training, be kind to yourself. Goals have changed. It's absolutely fine. You're doing a bit less, but you're feeling okay through it, rather than trying to keep on to that training plan you had before, doing the same volume, and you're just not getting the recovery because you're not sleeping, because stress is so high, and then you end up just getting more and more knackered, forget what even feeling fresh feels like, so you don't even realize you've got that knackered, or you start getting injured. So first of all, be kind to yourself, adjust. Then in terms of goals, so loads of people are planning to do the London Marathon. As far as you know, the London Marathon hasn't been cancelled yet, or insert any other race goal. But you're kind of going, well, I'm guessing it's going to be cancelled, or my mate said this, or I've heard this. Stop worrying, control the controllables, and leave the rest. You do not know if that race is happening, so stop trying to second guess it. All you need to say is, have I withdrawn from the race? If you have not withdrawn from the race, then as far as you know, it could be happening. And therefore, if you still want to do that race, you need to train for it. Because if it is going to happen, then you want to make sure you're fit on race day, particularly something like a marathon. You'll get injured. It will be really unfun if you're not fit for it. So decide if you're withdrawing from it. If you're not withdrawing from it, then you are doing it until you hear otherwise. So train for it. Bearing in mind, with something like London, you're going to be training through the heat, and then it's probably cold on race day. So start thinking about how you're going to need to adjust what you wear, what your nutrition and hydration is. It will be easier. You've done the training through the hot stuff. It will be easier when it's cold on race day, but just make sure that you know what you're going to wear, because it will be colder than most of your training. It's perfectly possible that that race, whatever it is, will be cancelled. But don't just go, okay, so I was going to do this race, that race, it's not happening, so I'm not going to do a race until 2021. You can still do a race. Doing a marathon by yourself would be hard, but maybe get some friends together, socially distance appropriate number, but do the distance, but maybe not racing it. So you do it as a social thing. You'll know other people who are training for that same event, have fun doing that together. Or if it's a half marathon, you can do a half marathon by yourself, mark it out in a park, do that race, tell other people you're doing it, so you get that accountability, so you've set that date so that you've got something to aim towards. Even if you don't want to do a half marathon, do your best 10K time. If you have trained well towards a marathon or a half marathon, you should be able to knock out a really decent 10K. So do that 10K in your local park. So set yourself a goal. You just stick with your original goal if it's still happening, but if it's not happening, set yourself your own. Do a virtual race online, or just do it yourself, but use that fitness. Don't just go, oh, it's all off until next year. Do bear in mind, we don't know, but probably any race that you do now, you'll need to carry your own nutrition. So if you haven't already, and they will be selling out if they haven't already, if you haven't already, get yourself a bladder, you know, one that goes in a little rucksack on your back with a tube to drink through. Get one of those for training. You're going to be training through August, so it's going to be hot. You need to watch out for your hydration. So you need it for your training, but also get used to using it, because chances are they won't have water out in the course. You'll need to deal with that yourself. So get used to it so that you're ready for it. What else? Top 3 things to prevent injury. I would say strength and conditioning, and as I said before, kind of making sure that that's about the mobility and stability as well as just heavy weights. Consistency, I think you've heard me say that before, but consistency, consistency, consistency. And then the other one that you've heard me say before, recovery. So making sure that it's not just about training, 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 but have those dips down, have a rest day each week. Recovery also means things like looking after your nutrition. Are you getting enough carbs in to replace the glycogen supplies in your body? Are you getting enough protein in? Protein's the building blocks of your cells, so you need protein to help your body recover. But also listening to your body. So many people say, oh, I've had this niggle for X number of months. And I say, has it got better in that time? And they say, no. But it only hurts when I get above 10K. Well, if you're planning to do any race above 10K, it's an issue. So whether you go and see a physio, whether you go to your doctor, whether you change your training in some way, but if it's not getting better, it's not going to magically get better. So do something about it and then keep to it. You know, people go and see a physio and they want them to give them massage and everything feels better, but generally that might be enough, but generally we need to change the root cause, which is probably something that's an imbalance in our body, usually those glutes. But keep following the advice that they give you. Nutrition, what role does nutrition play in race training? A big role. The most important thing, people get very hung up about race day, but I would say the most important thing is what are you eating day to day? Your training is however many weeks up until race day, and what you're eating then is going to affect the training. The training is the bedrock of what you do on race day, not just the running that you do on race day. So make sure that you are having a good, clean, healthy diet, that you are making sure you've got enough carbs in your system when you're doing your training run. So anything that's fast or anything that's long, so above kind of 90 minutes, you'll need fuel for that. So make sure you're fueling your running. You'll be able to then train, you'll be able to run harder, run better, run longer, whatever, if you are fueled. Make sure you're getting in enough protein in terms of your recovery, making sure you're taking care of all the micronutrients, so lots of different colored vegetables and fruits in your diet. Things like prebiotics, so it's again basically lots of different vegetables, seeds, nuts and things, so that you're protecting your immune system. I think we've seen through the whole kind of COVID thing, vitamin D is really important. There's more of it out there now that we get through the sun, but most people, particularly through the winter in England at least, would need to be taking a vitamin B supplement, and that's been shown to really help with immunity. Not definitely linked to COVID or not yet, but definitely helps with your immunity generally. And if you can stop yourself from getting ill, that helps improve the consistency. But then also in terms of fueling, work out what you're going to use on race day. So if it's a 5K, you don't need to fuel within the race, but anything above that, or particularly half marathon and beyond, you'll need to be taking on some sort of fuel as you're racing, because you will be exhausting your stored bodily supplies. You need to make sure you've got enough fuel in the engine. So use your training runs to find what works for you. There is no point in getting to race day and going, oh, I don't know, they all make my stomach feel horrible. Use training to work out the best one for you. There's loads of different products on the market now. So training is your time to research and to customize your stomach to using those products. So exactly the same way as we have to train our legs to run, we need to train our stomach to get better at using that fuel while we're training. How do you stay motivated when you've got to do a run that you don't want to do? I would say, first of all, I always encourage the people that I work with to work out what their goal is and why it matters to them. So, people go, oh, my goal's a 10K in time X. Why does that matter to you? How important is that to you? When you've got to get up and do that training run that's on your training plan, it's pissing it down outside, you didn't sleep well last night, you don't want to go out, what's going to get you out of bed in the morning? So picture that goal, make it as tangible as you can so you can really bring it to life and go, okay, that's why I'm getting up and doing that session. Try and make sure you've got rid of all the barriers that might stop you. So if you run in the early morning, get the kit out the night before, get everything you need out the night before. So you just need to get out of bed, put the clothes on, go out and do it. If you run after work as much as possible, try and just do that run straight after work. As soon as you sit down on the sofa or start talking to the kids or whatever, it becomes harder and harder to get out the door. So get rid of all the barriers, make it as easy as you can. Lou, going back to the cycling, have that kit ready. If you do have a turbo trainer, as much as possible, have it set up the night before if you do an early morning session, or for cycling, there's a lot of kit involved. So I make sure I have it all in one box together so it's there ready to go. So I'm not doing that running around the house trying to find this, trying to find that, trying to find that. And try and, as well as getting rid of the barriers, try and find the pull things. So maybe arrange to go for a run with a friend. They might not run at exactly the same pace as you, but if you've got that date to go and meet them at that time, you're more likely to get it done. Once you're on the run, you still have that kind of, especially if you're doing a long run or intervals or something, and you get that, I don't want to do it, it feels so hard. Don't go, oh my God, I've got to do a whole, I don't know, 16K run today. Just say, I've just got to get to the next kilometre. I've got to get to the next lamppost, whatever it is. Keep breaking it down into manageable chunks. When you get there, reassess. Are you still okay? Yep. Okay, just the next kilometre. So just break it down into manageable chunks. This is exactly the same on race day. On race day, don't line up and go, oh, I've got 42 point whatever K to go. You've got to just think, okay, I just need to do this bit, that bit, that bit. Make it manageable. There was a question about how do you make sure you don't go out too fast in races. So as I say, I use VDOT. So just Google VDOT pacing and you put in a recent 5K or a 10K time trial. If you haven't got one, do one. Put in a recent time trial, and then from there work out what your predicted marathon pace, half marathon pace, whatever it is, and then add that into your training. Most of your training would still be that easy pace, but then add in some training at your predicted goal pace so you get used to holding that pace. The person who asked this question also said they can hit their times in training, but they always fail in racing. Well, then I would start, I would always do a post-race evaluation. What went well? What could you improve on? And think back to those evaluations. Was there other factors? So was it nutrition? Was it nerves? Was it that you hadn't tapered well for it? So whenever you have a race, you would always train up to that race, but then depending on what distance it is, you taper down before the race so you go into it fresh. So think back what actually went wrong on race day. Was it simply you ran too fast? In which case, as I say, work out what that predicted pacing is. That predicted pacing is only based on if you then do enough training to do it. So you can't say, okay, did my 5K 20 weeks before my marathon, predicted time, now I'm going to sit on my bum for the next 20 weeks. You've got to do the training, but work out what that predicted pacing is and stick to it. So if you have a watch, obviously that's really helpful. Make sure you've got it in a good view that's going to allow you to see your current pace. And I would go for average pace rather than literally current pace, because it changes, particularly if you're doing something like London and there's lots of big office buildings, the GPS jumps around. So look at your average pace. But yeah, train at that pace and don't just rely on a watch. Try and know what it feels like on feel. And remember, at the beginning of the race, it feels really easy and ridiculously slow because you're fresh. But remember, your goal is to keep that constant pace all the way through rather than start way too fast and then slow down. The other thing maybe that's been the issue in training, most people for say a marathon or something would probably train up to about 20 miles out the 26 miles. So it might just be you've never trained beyond that sort of the last bit, and that's fine. Most people, as I say, you don't do the full distance because there's too much recovery associated with it, but you need to make sure that you've taken care of your nutrition. Most of us might have just about enough in our body to be able to get us to 20K, and then the infamous bonk is when we've really exhausted all of our fuel supplies. So make sure you're training with nutrition as well. There was a question about the older runner. What's the best advice for staying free as you become older? Listen to your body, and that's the same whatever age you are, but be aware things change. So what you could get away with when you were younger, you probably can't get away with as you get older. So things like the mobility work, things like warming up, all of that becomes way more important. It takes me way longer to warm up now than it used to. Recovery, you probably need more recovery time. So more days in the week where you're not training, and recovery days don't mean days where you cram in everything else and get yourself exhausted from life. Proper downtime, really maxing out on that nutrition. So making sure you're getting into your body what your body needs to recover. Strength and conditioning definitely is important. So making sure that you keep on doing that strength and conditioning, and as I say, mobility, stability being the kind of bedrocks there. And then the person who asked the question said they keep on getting injured, they're just chasing one injury after another. Make sure, so presumably when you got injured, you got some advice from a physio or something about what the injury was and what to do about it. If you didn't, then I'd say that's number one. Make sure you keep up that homework. You know, people, they get injured, they're so motivated to do all the exercises the physio gives them, and then they start getting better and they start stopping the rehab exercises. Most of us have imbalances, and as the person who wrote this question said, you know, you spend most of your day sitting down, and that means you end up with tight hips, you end up with your glutes turned off potentially. Doing that rehab is for life. It's not just to get you over that injury. If the root factors are still the same, you're still spending most of your time sitting down and getting those tight hips, you need to keep working on that hip mobility. You need to keep working on the glutes. So don't, and that's just an example, but don't give up on the physio just because the injury is solved. Keep it up, make that strength and conditioning, add it onto that plan, pin to the fridge or wherever it is, make that part of your weekly routine. Question from Caroline, tips on restarting after a hamstring injury. And in fact, the next question I was going to come to is tips for restarting after a tibia injury. Whatever the injury is, it's the same thing. So you know where you were before the injury. You've had however many weeks, maybe months off with that injury. Don't just jump into what you were doing before. Your cardio fitness might be good enough. Supposing you were comfortably running 10K before the injury and you've just had 2 months off, as an example. You might still be fit enough to go out and do that 10K, and you're desperate to prove to yourself you still can, but you've just had 2 months off running with an injury. So you need to build back up slowly. You might want to do run walk. The reason for doing run walk is partly if your fitness isn't there yet, then it gives you that break. But the main reason is as we run for longer, we get more fatigued and our form breaks down. And so doing run walk just gives us, you know, it could be 5 minutes running, 30 seconds walk, even 15 seconds walk, just gives us that reset. And then when we run again, our form is so much better until we get fatigued again. So it just keeps us fresh. It reduces the chance of injury because we're keeping ourselves fresh. So build up slowly, start from the beginning. Don't just go on, I felt okay. Generally, injuries, we don't feel them at the time. It's that it builds up over time. So be cautious. You will get to the end goal faster by going a little bit more cautious than overdoing it. Then in terms of, so whether it's the hamstring, whether it's the tibia, do you know what caused that injury? Have you been doing whatever rehab stuff to try and deal with that injury? As I just said, don't just dump all that because you're back to running now. Keep on with it. Maybe there was an issue in terms of your gait or in terms of one of the other muscles. So often hamstring injuries aren't to do with the hamstring. It could be that your glutes aren't working properly and therefore you're overusing your hamstring. With the tibia, it could be in terms of your running gait. You might be having a bit too much of a forefoot strike or something. Don't try and self-diagnose, get some expert opinion. But all I'm saying is often the issue isn't the thing that you think it is. Often lower leg injuries, again, it's always the glutes, but if we have weak glutes, we overuse our lower leg. And so we end up with lower leg injuries. And yes, we need to then strengthen that lower part of our body, but often the root cause was the glutes. So trying to work out what that root cause is. And if you don't know it, then just having a general strength conditioning plan that is going to work on your mobility, is going to work on that stability, cutting down the risk factors. So yeah, build up slowly, strength and conditioning, and then listen to your body. If you feel that niggle coming back again, be aware of it. So many times I hear people say, oh, but it's only a niggle. Well, yeah, that injury started as a niggle and then it got worse and worse until it became an injury and took you out of your running. So listen to your body. If it's getting niggly again, whatever you did last time to make it better, and that doesn't just mean rest will help, but it's not solved the root cause. So you need to know what that root cause is to be able to adjust it. With the tibia specifically, the other thing to add in, any bony injury, particularly at this time of year when it was really hot and we were sweating a lot, we lose calcium when we're sweating. So if you're doing, particularly if you're doing a long run, or if you're a triathlete maybe who's just done a long bike session and then you're going out on a run, so you're already really hot and sweaty, you've lost a lot of calcium in your sweat, I would just preload some calcium at the beginning. So whether that's having some milk or a yogurt or something like that before you're training, just so you've preloaded your calcium if you know that it's going to be a sweaty session. That is it in terms of the questions I have had in advance. I'll give you a bit longer just in case there's any other questions that anybody wants to ask. Just checking that we've got nothing else come through there. But just to kind of summarize, and you've heard me say it a million times now, but I am going to say it again. So the key things to take into account are consistency, trying to build up steadily, not trying to do too much too soon. Get a plan. So if you're with Auro, I know a lot of you are joining this conversation from Auro. Auro has loads of great plans on there. I wrote some of the run plans, but there's loads of great plans on there that will help get you to that goal steadily. So making sure you keep that consistency, making sure that you keep it regular. And then recovery, making time for recovery. So don't just train. Have a rest day a week, maybe a rest week every few weeks where you just take down the training a little bit, allow the body to recover so you can come back stronger, and learn to listen to your body. We often listen to our body, but we then ignore it. So, you know, it's almost like having a sort of little kid who's like, mom, nagging you all the time. And sometimes it's like, no, really, whatever. But sometimes they're actually saying something you need to listen to. So learning when to listen, when to take notice, and when it is just a niggling, you don't need to worry too much about it. Those of you who are with Running Heroes and are interested, this chat I'm doing now is partly as a partnership with Auro. Auro is or anybody else who's interested, Auro is a really great training app. You download it onto your phone. You've got a load of different trainers on there who will talk you through either a workout, or as I say, they also have plans on there. So we've got everything: running, cycling, cross trainers. So when the gym's open again, cross trainers, strength and conditioning, both with weights and just body weight that you can be doing at home. If gyms aren't open, there's still loads of stuff on there. So outdoor runs, there's walks, guided walks, meditation, yoga, so all that stretching and everything. So it's just like having a PT there with you, talking you through the session, keeping you motivated. So a really, really great training tool. If you're with Running Heroes, then you can get a discount. If you sign up on the Auro app, or sign up for the Auro app now, you get a 30-day free trial, and then you get 20% off after that 30-day trial if you want to carry on. So if you use the code HEROES, HEROES, that should get you that 20%, well, the 30-day free trial, and then the 20% off afterwards. So at least do the 30-day trial. You've got nothing to lose, and it's going to give you that opportunity to see if it works for you. Just give you that extra motivation to keep yourself going. I think for most people, we got into lockdown, we had all these lofty goals of everything we were going to achieve, and we did for a bit, and then everything's kind of fizzled down. And now we're not quite sure if we're training for something or not, and why we're training. So just taking out you having to think about what you're having to do, but just load up the app and get that inspiration for something to do. Try something that you don't normally do. If you haven't got a goal this year, try getting into something you don't normally do. Try yoga if you don't normally do it. Anyway, I hope that is helpful. Don't think there's any more questions come in. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. If you've got any questions, my name's Lucy. I'm at Feel Fit with Lucy on Facebook, on Instagram, and my website's Feel Fit with Lucy. So drop me a question. If you're interested in working with me, drop me a question as well. Otherwise, I hope to see you over on the Auro app or for a workout sometime soon. Great to see you guys. Take care.